abroad. The Biden administration provides updates on COVID-19 while keeping an eye on the situation in Ukraine. Still divided, Republicans and Democrats spar over White House nominees to a pair of federal agencies. Pro-life push. Lawmakers in one U.S. state advance a measure to protect the unborn. And our whole hearts. The Holy Father has a message about loving the church. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Fears that Russia could invade Ukraine today have not borne out, but tensions remain high. The Biden administration and U.S. allies say Russia continues to escalate despite talk of diplomacy. So where does it all stand? White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. Wars in Europe rarely start on a Wednesday. That's how one top Russian diplomat sarcastically put it. But the White House is not amused, saying Russia is showing no signs of backing down.
We have good reason to believe the Russians are saying one thing and doing another in an effort to obfuscate, in an effort to hide the truth.
The U.S. State Department says its concern has not abated a single bit. Russia continues to threaten Ukraine.
We have not seen any de-escalation on the ground. On the contrary, it appears that Russia continues the military buildup.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin traveled to Europe to reassure NATO allies our country stands united, while Russian President Vladimir Putin continues to engage with other world leaders, today hosting the president of Brazil. Back in the U.S., a setback for former President Donald Trump. President Joe Biden deciding to release White House visitor logs and give them to the Capitol Hill committee probing what happened on January 6th.
Meanwhile, the White House COVID-19 response team reporting that daily COVID cases are down. Hospital admissions and deaths from the disease down as well. They believe the Omicron wave is waning. They're cautiously optimistic, believe that things are moving in the right direction, but at the same time stress that people must remain vigilant.
We want to give people a break from things like mask wearing when these metrics are better, and then have the ability to reach for them again should things worsen.
The federal government says it's already shipped free at-home COVID tests to more than 50 million homes. The Biden administration is also going back to Congress, asking for an additional $30 billion to continue fighting the coronavirus pandemic.
Also tonight, Special Counsel John Durham's investigation into the origins of the Trump-Russia probe continue. Durham is looking into possible misconduct within the U.S. government, and to date, 3 people have been charged. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
And joining me now is Chris Bedford, senior editor at the Federalist and co-founder of RightForge. Chris, welcome back. Great to see you as always. As we heard from Owen, there have been further developments in the Durham investigation. What more can you tell us, and why is it significant?
Well, some of the major things that we figured out since Friday in particular is that the Hilary Clinton campaign was paying a technology company. That CTO was, according to the Durham investigation, helping out VIPs by hacking or by filtering out information that was coming from the executive office of the president, from Trump Tower as well, and giving that information over to investigators or to these VIPs, basically as part of this whole collusion hoax. He'd been accused of working with the Russians, and this guy was out to try and find any kind of even completely standard communications with Russians to show that that was the case. This firm has only been hired 2 times ever before. Once was by the Hillary Clinton campaign, and the second time was by the Biden campaign.
All right, I want to shift gears here for just a moment. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin signed legislation this afternoon making masks optional in schools regardless of mandates by school boards. This comes after a number of states and cities, including D.C. here, loosened their COVID restrictions earlier this week. Chris, what are your thoughts on that, and what do you think this all signals?
Well, this is a huge battle that's going on right now, and there's a couple of people who are fanatically devoted to masking children in our schools. Children have been left behind, even though since the very beginning of the pandemic, one of the first things we learned about it is that children were largely very safe from this pandemic. It was adults that had to worry. Yet for some reason in D.C., they're pulling back mask mandates for everyone except for children. And in Virginia, where you don't have to wear a mask into a bar or a restaurant or anything like that, children as young as 3 years old are still having to wear masks in preschool, 5-year-olds having to wear masks in kindergarten. So he came out with an executive order against that and was fought by the school boards. He was sued by everyone who was devoted to this and devoted to the teachers' unions. So he went back to the legislature. A bunch of prominent Democrats joined with this effort. They passed the law, and it's a really wonderful thing to see this done legislatively and bipartisanly because so many sides are sick of it. However, I still expect some lawsuits to come, maybe some kind of judge who may try to put some injunction over some ridiculous reason.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. I want to talk about Canada now. Prime Minister Trudeau has invoked the Emergencies Act in response to the trucker protests, an extreme measure, which I believe has never been taken before. Canada's Deputy Prime Minister explained that the Emergencies Act extends to cryptocurrency, saying, quote, "We are broadening the scope of Canada's anti-money laundering and terrorist financing rules so that they cover crowdfunding platforms and the payment service providers they use. These changes cover all forms of transactions, including digital assets such as cryptocurrency." Chris, your thoughts?
This is a massive overreach, and it's something that's gone well beyond anything we've ever seen. This is a protest that's extremely inconvenient and is causing a lot of snarls up in Canada from these people who are, very inconveniently to them, losing their jobs over a mandate, over the vaccine mandates they're being forced on, inability to actually work and inability to make a living. That's the cause of this protest. And for him to go there and start having the opposition funds, the funds of opposition parties seized by going to the Five Eyes, including the United States and England, and saying, help us seize these funds, by going to the banks saying, help us seize these funds, is really a step too far. And if you've been following some of the parliamentary footage that's come out, it looks like he's not getting applause from even his own party, and the opposition parties are very, very strongly against him. But he is continuing smugly. I think we are witnessing the end of the Trudeau government.
Yeah, and I know hackers also released a list of donors for Give, Send, Go, and now the platform is calling on the FBI, that is, for an investigation. What's the latest on this? And talk to us about how RightForge is involved.
There's a hacker who's been, as recently today, taking credit for having hacked these people. Their crimes, according to him, were donating to a protest that he didn't like, so he exposed personal information. RightForge was working with Give, Send, Go at the very beginning of this, starting February 5th until this past Friday, when they decided they would rather go with their own internal team. So we were happy to work with them for that week and get them secure at that time and help them scale up their operation. But then we had a difference of how to move forward. They decided to go with their internal team, and very sadly, they were hacked over the weekend. Give, Send, Go is a company run by good Christian people who are trying to do a very good thing here, and they've got a lot of enemies out there. So I really do wish them all the best in their future endeavors.
Yeah, and Chris, before I let you go, talk to us about what else you're following right now. A lot going on.
Well, Washington, D.C. right now is and San Francisco are some of the big pinnacles, and Virginia, where you've got these blocks of parents who are starting to rise up and say, we need to defend our kids. We need to break them out of school, because until previously, only the business interests have been represented when there was fighting against COVID mandates or mask mandates, or maybe large groups of voter blocks. Now we need to mobilize a parent base. We saw that in the recall elections in San Francisco that went after, removed 3 of the school board members by more than 70% each. We saw that in the bipartisan mask mandates that are going on right now. And I'm hoping to see that soon in Washington, D.C., because while our mayor, as of yesterday, got rid of our vaccine mandates and allowed tourists, school children, and 60% of our black population of this city to be able to go back to restaurants and businesses and gyms and swimming pools, the city council is currently convening an emergency meeting to try and reinstate this. So I'm looking forward to that kind of reaction here in my own city as well.
All right, we've got to leave it right there. Chris, thank you so much for your time. We always appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, Arizona's Senate has approved a heartbeat law which would outlaw most abortions after 15 weeks. Its sponsor, State Senator Nancy Barto, says the bill acknowledges the reality of fetal pain.
The Supreme Court is becoming aware in law of these facts, and viability is no longer going to be the standard going forward, a lot of us believe. And so the Dobbs decision before the Mississippi bill, before the Supreme Court right now, is probably going to overturn Roe, we're hoping.
The Arizona measure passed by a vote of 16 to 13. It now moves on to the House, where it is expected to pass. Meanwhile, the state Senate in Arkansas has voted down a bill modeled after the civil enforcement procedure in the Texas heartbeat law. Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson wants lawmakers to wait upon pending rulings from the U.S. Supreme Court before enacting new laws. Last year, a federal judge blocked one of the 20 pro-life laws which Arkansas had approved. Well, it is no secret that the U.S. Congress is divided as ever. Republicans and Democrats are now in open conflict over several nominees. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says that he's worried about President Joe Biden's choices for the Federal Reserve.
These are highly controversial nominees, extremely controversial, who've repeatedly expressed the view that the Fed should be involved in things that are not the Fed's responsibility.
No Republicans showed up at the Senate Banking Committee, delaying a vote on 5 Federal Reserve nominations.
But instead of showing up to work to do their jobs, Republicans have walked out on the American people.
Meanwhile, on the Senate floor, Republican Steve Daines warned that Robert Califf, the president's choice to head up the Food and Drug Administration, is no friend of the pro-life movement.
As FDA commissioner during the Obama administration, Mr. Califf showed blatant disregard for the unborn and for the health and safety of women and girls when he weakened safety and reporting requirements for a dangerous chemical abortion drug.
Califf was later confirmed, but was opposed by most Republicans and some Democrats. In a statement, March for Life President Jeannie Mancini said in part, despite the research and science, which includes thousands of documented adverse events caused by chemical abortion drugs, Dr. Califf has acted to advance a pro-abortion political agenda. Women deserve better than an FDA that prioritizes politics over their health and safety. As EWTN News Nightly has reported, the 2022 federal budget will include all the pro-life and conscience protections currently in place. Coming up, how the Vatican is studying the relationship between priests and lay people. The leader of a military junta in Burkina Faso has been sworn in as the country's president.
De faire respecter et de défendre la Constitution.
Military officer Paul-Henri Sandago Dambia took the oath to uphold the country's constitution during a nationally televised broadcast. Dambia takes power less than a month after a military coup. He promises to secure the war-torn country from violence linked to al-Qaeda and ISIS. The highest court in the EU has ruled financial penalties against Poland and Hungary are allowed as censure for their laws on sexuality, gender, and other issues.
Rzeczpospolita Polska, strona skarżąca.
The ruling permits the EU to withhold billions of dollars from the bloc's pandemic recovery fund, which the two nations have yet to receive. Poland and Hungary say the court is exceeding existing treaties by linking member finances to disagreements over sovereign internal issues. Officials in Germany say they will end most coronavirus restrictions by next month. The measures are set to be lifted by March 20th. The country's new chancellor says the peak has been reached, and it appears there will not be a mandatory vaccine requirement for adults. Neighboring Austria and Sweden also say they are dropping their COVID restrictions within the next few weeks. Pope Francis encourages the faithful to love the Catholic Church with all of our hearts.
Dio si è fidato di Giuseppe come ha fatto Maria.
At his weekly talk to pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father says love for the faith starts with the human model of Mary and Joseph. He also says the Church is made of people who sin and are inconsistent, but the Catholic faith is full of goodness and holiness, and through our faith, we find forgiveness for our faults. The Vatican is set to study the relationship between priests and lay people, and among those involved in the 3-day conference is Pope Francis. The gathering seeks to strengthen the relationship between clergy and lay people, emphasizing the call to holiness each of us receives. The Holy Father will deliver remarks on faith and what it means to be a priest in today's world. Joining us now from Rome is Father Jean-Robert Armagoff, member of the Symposium's committee. Father, thank you so much for your time today. Can you tell us a little bit more about the three-day conference and why it's being held now?
St. John Paul II said that the problem of the priesthood was a problem of the foundation, the origin, the theological meaning of priesthood, and priesthood being part of the general vocation. There is a general vocation of every baptized, and some of them are called to priesthood, some of them are called to be lay people working in the world. But there is the need of knowing better about the fundamental theology of priesthood. That's why the symposium is going to talk about.
And I understand during the meetings, you'll be talking about specific themes like tradition and New Horizons or celibacy and charism, spirituality. What are your expectations for that?
Well, the aim of the symposium is not to solve all the problems today, but I think that the questions shall be asked, and several of the papers are going to ask for the fundamentals of those specific problems. And I should add that the symposium is not an end in itself. It shall be followed by other actions, specifically books and leaflets, to develop, to unfold what has been told in the 3 days of the symposium. The symposium is just trying to lay the foundation of a new reflection about vocational training and especially priesthood.
And I'm curious, Father, speaking of the priesthood, overall, how is the priesthood around the world doing?
Well, the general number of the priests in the world, about 400,000 priests, and it's a very different growth according to the continents. There is a fall in Europe and in North America, and the growth in Africa, in Asia, in South America. So the real problem is that the northern hemisphere has few priests, few vocations, but the southern hemispheres have a lot of young priests and many vocations. So the general problem is not the fall of the vocational call of the Holy Spirit to the Church, but the real problem is our problems on the northern hemisphere, in Europe and in America, that we are losing priests every year. That's the real problem. And I think that the symposium aims to give a true, real, sacramental foundation of priesthood, linking vocational training to the Holy Trinity, saying that there is something from our baptism in the Trinity which will allow us to think better about what we are going to do. That's vocation. And I think that really the symposium should be the occasion of rethinking pastorals of vocations in a way that would allow young people to look forth and to enter priesthood.
Well, Father, thank you so much for speaking with us today. We really appreciate your time. Father Jean-Robert Armagoff, member of the Symposium Scientific Committee. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Up next, a preview of an annual conference in New York that seeks to pursue the urge for the truth. At the Olympics, Norway continues to lead the way in the medal count with 13 golds and 28 total medals. Germany has 10 golds. The U.S. has 8 golds, 7 silver, and 4 bronze. China and Austria now round out the top 5. And finally tonight, New York Encounter 2022 starts this Friday. The 3-day culture event offers panel discussions, exhibits, and live performances. In its 14th year, New York Encounter aims to promote education and dialogue. This year's theme is This Urge for the Truth. And Mark Painter is exhibit curator and organizer for New York Encounter 2022. He is also a Post-Doctoral Fellow in Immunology at the University of Pennsylvania, and he joins us now. Welcome, Mark. Great to see you. Can you talk a little bit about the history of this event and how it can bring people of different beliefs and cultures together?
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to be here talking about the New York Encounter, which is happening this weekend in New York City. So in terms of the history, the New York Encounter is born out of the experience of communion and liberation, which is a lay ecclesial movement in the church, which started in Italy in the 1950s through the charism given to Father Luigi Giussani. And that charism is spread around the world. It's very alive and present in the United States. And 14 years ago, people of communion and liberation living in New York City had this recognition that, you know, the pillars of this movement, communion and liberation, charity, culture, mission, really invited them to take a step and to really engage in a public-facing event that could hopefully embrace everybody, people from different backgrounds, different religions, by really living out the gift of this charism, which is really built on the foundation that the Word was made flesh, that God became a presence in the world who we encounter today, that changes everything. And because we encounter God in the flesh, we become interested in every bit of reality, because it's the place where we meet Christ, where we see the Holy Spirit working. And so the New York Encounter is really an event born out of that in the Christian encounter, you become people interested in every aspect of reality, which means we can talk to everyone. We can invite everyone to look with us at everything that's happening in the world today.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And what can we expect from this year's encounter for those who are going to attend?
Yeah, so if you come to the encounter, I think what you should expect is to find people who are really alive, who are interested in everything, who want to take everything seriously. And as the theme hints at, this urge for the truth, who really want to look at things for what they really are and like move past the simplistic way of just falling into one side or the other in the public discourse, and really to say what's really going on, what's really happening across broad spheres within the experience that we all share as members of this society in the United States.
Yeah, and you mentioned the theme, this urge for the truth. Why was that theme chosen for this year? What's significant about it?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked. So the theme, this urge for the truth, was really born out of a conversation that we had over the course of a weekend with 25 or so friends about what we see as the most pressing experience and issue happening in society today. And what we came to is this recognition that in the initial impact with reality, like we had at the start of the pandemic, we have these questions that really look for real answers. We want to actually know the truth of what's going on, the truth of the meaning of our lives, of what we're made for, of what saves everything that's happening. But we can quickly fall into the temptation of moving away from that and falling into just accepting partial answers, not really looking for the truth, just accepting whatever our side has to say, and thinking that whoever disagrees with us must be wrong. So we wanted to return to that original impetus that we have in front of the things that happen, when something really dramatic happens, when we fall in love, when someone dies, that we want to really know the truth about things, and to look together in that way at some of the most important and interesting things that are happening in the world today, I think.
And we're running out of a little bit of time here, but I do want to ask you this. I know that you're a curator for the event. Can you give us maybe just a preview into some of the exhibits that people will see?
Yeah, so I think we have presentations and exhibits. I think that's the beauty of the encounter. You'll see people interested in truth across the spectrum. So Brian Stevenson will be here talking about what is it to live the vocation of a lawyer in a true way in front of people who may be wrongly sentenced on death row. Francis Collins talking about truth in science. We're going to have an event on journalism. Can journalism really be at the service of the truth instead of just pushing an agenda, which we know is all too common these days? And exhibits about science, and about Amy Winehouse, which I think really gives you the sense of the diversity of what's here and the fact that we really, as Christians, can engage with everything and show the newness of the Christian experience in every sphere of life.
All right. And before I let you go, what are you looking most forward to at this event?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody there, to participating in this life, seeing the volunteers. It's an all-volunteer event. who give their lives freely to make something like this happen, and listening to the witnesses of these amazing people about the life of Father Giussani, about a future saint, Takashi Nagai, heroes like Brian Stevenson, and to really hopefully learn more about how the world really is through the eyes of these people who aren't afraid to really look for the truth in everything and to engage with everything that's happening. I'm excited about that.
Oh, Mark, it sounds like such a wonderful event, and thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about it. We appreciate it. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, and if you want to see how to participate, go to newyorkencounter.org. Okay, thank you. Thank you. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night, and God bless.